Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to feel valued, appreciated, respected, like their contributions matter. It gave me the ability to realize that where you start doesn't determine where you end. It's what you
Yeah.
do in the middle. And I think every leader is going to be confronted with something that it's thrown in your face. And you got two choices. You can say, I can't, or you can say, let's grow.
I am so glad that you joined us on the Leadership Puzzle podcast today. I'm Jeff Lupinacci, your host, and we are exploring the pieces that make great leaders and great organizations. And oh my gosh, I'm excited for my next guest, Dr. Kevin Foreman, known to many as the People's Bishop. He has a leadership journey that is nothing short of inspiring. Bishop Foreman is a true Renaissance leader, a pastor, entrepreneur, philanthropist, author, and founder of the Harvest Church, Harvest Bible College, and the Harvest Leadership Network. And through his work, he touches lives across the globe, serving communities with compassion. He has mentored leaders in every sector and has helped people discover their full potential. What I love most about Bishop Foreman is his ability to make leadership practical, approachable, and deeply human. Let's welcome Bishop Foreman. Hey, I'm glad you joined us on the Leadership Puzzle today, where we explore the pieces that make great leaders and great organizations. And oh my goodness, I am so excited for my next guest, Dr. Kevin Foreman, known to many as the People's Bishop, has a leadership journey that is nothing short of inspiring. Bishop Foreman is a true Renaissance leader. He's a pastor, he's an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, an author. He's the founder of Harvest Church in Denver and now in Atlanta, as well as Harvest Bible College, Harvest Leadership Network. Through his work, he has touched lives across the globe, serving communities. He has mentored leaders in every sector and loves helping people discover their full potential. And what I think I love most about Bishop Foreman is his ability to make leadership practical, approachable, and deeply human. Bishop Foreman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Listen, you get the award for the most inspiring introduction. That is amazing, and hearing that, just talking about that journey, I'm so excited to be on with you. Thank you for the opportunity. Excited to add value to your audience.
Well, we're really glad to have you. Now, I do have a global audience, and you talk about growing up in Orange Mound, Memphis. Now, why don't you give a little bit of context to the audience who may not know what Orange Mound is about?
Orange Mound is right. It may sound almost like a dessert, Orange Mound, like a push pop back in the day.
Yeah.
But Orange Mound was this part of Memphis, Tennessee, that was really an inner city area. So you get the plight that accompanies a lot of those inner city areas. Immediately following the days of slavery in America, it was one of the bustling, high performance, high productivity areas for many African Americans. And just through time and policies, et cetera, you saw a turn in that area. So as a kid being reared in that area, I saw a lot of the plight that comes with that area. You saw gangs, you saw drugs, you saw gun violence, you saw a lot of those things. While at the same time, you saw family, you saw love, you saw resilience, you saw people have a desire to improve their lives. And so it's one of those environments that if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And so I'm very grateful for that experience, because it gave me the ability to realize that where you start it's what you do in the middle that does.
Yeah. Now, you come across people from all walks of life. How did you make that leap out of that inner city where it had these two dichotomies of kind of some of the best and some of the worst, yet you got out and ended up in Denver. But I want to hear how you got out, and then how did you end up in music in Denver?
Oh, listen. So I was born in Denver, reared in Memphis, back to Denver.
Oh,
So
okay,
spent
got it.
spent those formative times there, and but I really credit Orange Mound and Memphis with a lot of my rearing because that's where a lot of those early formative
Hmm.
lessons were. And the joke is this: I came out of my mom's room with a Bible and a briefcase. That I had both this industrious entrepreneurial side while simultaneously mixed with the spiritual side. That interestingly enough, those two, for many people, sometimes those two are two separate things. I saw those as one thing. I saw that those two things didn't have to be separate,
Right,
and so really combining that. And so for me, there was this internal knowing that despite what I was in, that I didn't have to be that. Despite some of the examples that I saw, those weren't examples that I had to be. The saying is you become what you behold. So what do you do when you have to become something that you haven't beheld, that you haven't
right.
seen, that you haven't had modeled? And so there was this natural leader that was in me, and the way it showed up is I was a bad boy. And when I say bad boy, I don't mean it in a good way. Sometimes they say bad boys
Yeah,
in a good way. I was a kid who would, you tell me to go left, I go right. You tell me to go straight, I go backwards. You tell me to sit down, I'd stand up. There was this, what appeared to be rebellious nature in some instances. And again, there's the dichotomy: rebellious, but at the same time, very respectful. There was that nature that was really this inner leader that simply needed to be shaped and developed. There was something about me that said, well, why don't we do it like this? Why don't we do it like this? Why don't we change it? Why don't we view it differently? And that really propelled me to say, this is where I have started, and these are the examples I've seen, but this is not who I want to be. So I would reach for examples that I saw and emulate principles, emulate
mm,
behaviors that I saw and said, I like that, I like that. I want to do that. And then when we returned back to Denver, totally different environment, but it was many of the same principles that I had learned where, school is school, kids are kids, and high school is high school, middle school is what it is in many instances. But for me, I was the kid that was different. I began to refine those skills. And, so then I go to being the kid who, I'm wearing suits to school. I don't have a backpack. I've got a briefcase. I'm negotiating with my teachers over papers and grades. And even in elementary, while all the kids were out at recess, I was the kid who would talk to the teacher and say, well, let me help you grade the papers. Let me take something off of your shoulder. So I had a
interesting.
leverage as a kid where I'm grading the papers of my peers. And so I learned I had a gravitation that pulled me towards people who sat in seats of leadership and sat in seats of authority. And so consequently that really began to shape that entire journey. And then you get to Denver, and we're active in church. And I had a friend. He and I were very competitive, and he was a musician. I played saxophone, didn't like it, played trombone, didn't like it, played trumpet, didn't like it at all. And you got to keep your cheeks full
Yeah.
like a
Oh,
chipmunk
yeah.
all the time. And you fast forward, he gets a drum set one year. So I go home and I say, his name's Justin. I said, Justin got a drum set. I want a drum set too. And I was told, well, you don't even know how to play drums. I said, but I'm going to learn. And so we go to this music store, which is called Flesher Hinton off of Havana in Colorado in Denver. And we get there, we get a wine colored drum set, and I literally taught myself how to play drums,
Love
doing
it.
what I had learned years earlier. I just emulated. So I watched the drummer who, anyone knows anything about playing drums, if you're a right-handed drummer, typically you cross your hands like this. You got your hi-hat, you got your snare. He was a left-handed drummer. I didn't know that. I just emulated him. So I learned to play drums like a left-handed drummer, which you typically, this is your hi-hat, this is your snare. But the principle there, to the point, is I learned to emulate what I saw in others, and I would craft who I became. So I learned that the shape you start doesn't have to determine the shape you become.
Yeah. I love that idea because so many leaders, especially leaders, they don't always they're not conscious that they are learning from other leaders in front of them. If you've
Right.
got a bad manager,
Yep.
guess what? You're going to learn some things whether you want to or not. That's you're gonna have a tendency to be a bad manager or bad leader.
Exactly.
Um,
So true.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I
so
love
true.
it.
And I think that's the power of the consciousness of recognizing that you are doing that. We're shaped. And I think one of the best things great leaders can do is be shapeshifters. Even though this is how I was shaped, a shapeshifter just means I can change my shape, I can change my identity at will. And to your point, when it comes to management and leadership, you can take on some things that you think are you. They're not really you. They're just traits that you began to take on the shape of other people. And I think that's why the onus for great leadership is so important, especially today, because we live in a culture that really there's a lot of leadership voids and vacuums.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. There's some studies that out there that something like only 30% of leaders or managers have had any kind of formal training,
Wow. Wow.
which you can see it in every aspect um, of organizations, whether it's commercial,
Mhm.
or nonprofit or
Right.
religious or political.
Right.
It is leadership is one of those things that 20 years ago was such a focus, and
Right.
now it's more identity than kind of the core leadership of what's going to make us great.
I think I love what you just said. And you know what I love about it, and even looking at that trend, especially I think what's happened so much over the last decade or so is with with social media's advancements, while there's so many great things, I think one of the unintended consequences is now everybody sees themselves as a leader. And if I've got a following, that must mean I'm a leader.
Right. Yeah.
If I got people liking and sharing, I must be a leader. So people who maybe aren't necessarily great leaders, but they're great at attracting eyeballs, became the standard of leadership. And
Yeah.
so when that becomes the standard of leadership, then everyone begins to emulate that. Back to your point, now you've got this scenario where the training is, well, this guy did it and he got 10,000 likes, so that must be the right way to do it, even if it's not.
It's interesting because you just made me think about the what is it, late 90s, early 2000s, with some of the leaders of like Enron and some of these
Mhm.
big companies that were super charismatic and grew amazing companies, but had some moral or ethical failings, and
Right.
it just crashed the company and decimated a lot. And so I wonder if some of these new uh, influencers who don't really have any of that foundational principles
Right.
in place are just setting themselves up for some of that kind of crash and burn.
Yeah, and I think you see it every day. I mean, you look at it in any industry. To your point, and I think you see that happening every day. Where I think about how they talk about how chickens are produced, and I was watching a documentary, and they said that in America, because Americans like more white meat, and chickens, the chickens have been designed, engineered in many ways so that they have larger breasts for larger breast meat. And what they would say is that these chickens would grow so fast that the legs didn't have enough time to support the weight.
Right.
So they'd stand up and you think, wow, look at this big chicken. And then they take two steps and fall down
Yeah.
because they couldn't handle the weight of what they were carrying, which is why I think what you're doing is so amazing, because leadership is a puzzle. You got to put the different pieces together, and good principles and really determine the long-term productivity of a thing. You may be able to stand up and take a couple of quick steps, but that's going to fall if you didn't build those legs, and those legs are your leadership principles.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you've clearly have built some of those core foundations. I mean, just just reading through your history. Okay, so you get into music. You, you
Right.
you start out with drums.
Right.
You do well enough that you're inducted into the Colorado Gospel Music Hall of Fame.
Right.
And then you like, oh, I think I'll shift that and go into church planting.
Right.
Tell us about that journey from music to church planting and how that stretched your leadership muscles.
Right. So getting into music was amazing because I always had an affinity for it, but when you really get into music, there's so much discipline, so much, again, the emulation piece. I learned to play by ear, so I didn't learn to play initially through reading music. And so you'd listen and you'd repeat. And again, another leadership principle. And I didn't have a formal teacher. My formal, and this is pre-YouTube, so you have to go to the music stores and kind of get a tool here, a tool there to try to help you. And I got from drums, went to keys, started doing choirs and leading choirs of hundreds and hundreds of people and leading worship as like a frontline type singer. And I remember, and here's how I actually got into keys, which precipitated getting into the Colorado Gospel Music Hall of Fame. One night, the staff I served on a church at, I was still in high school. They came and they said, well, we just released all of the band. And so this is a Monday night. So by Wednesday, you need to be ready. I said, well, ready to do what? I was a drummer and I dealt with singers and stuff. They said, well, you need to be ready to play. I said, play what? They said, you need to know how to play the keys. Now, this, to give it context, this is a church that's thousands and thousands of people. So you could have reached for anybody. But that night, and again, I'm still in high school. That night, I took that charge and that mandate as an opportunity to let's grow. And I think every leader is going to be confronted with something that it's thrown in your face, and you got two choices. You can say I can't, or you can say let's grow.
Yeah.
And when you say let's grow, you're saying let's go, and that's what I did. So on Tuesday, I figured out how to get it done. And by Wednesday night, I'll tell you what, we had three songs ready to go. Now, we repeated those three songs for a while. I had three songs ready to go. And it was the mandate that I was given.
Yeah.
I think many people limit themselves because whenever they're given something that seems beyond their scope, beyond their ability, rather than take on the challenge, they run from the challenge. And I was like, if I was to use a biblical figure, David, I ran toward Goliath, not from him.
Yeah.
And so we go from there, inducted into the Colorado Gospel Music Hall of Fame. Simultaneously, I'm entrepreneurial. So I'm building a business. So at the age of 12, I helped pioneer a program in a bank in Denver. It's called Young Americans Bank. They had a special charter from the state rather, to offer a degree, or it's not degrees, but financial products to young people.
Hmm.
Credit cards, checking accounts, savings accounts. There was a whole educational component, investment accounts. So at 12, and my picture's still up in that bank today, on the second level, they call it Young Ameritown, which is basically it gives young people an opportunity to go experience what it is running the city. And so you've got the news station, you've got the flower shop, you've got all of these different things where they get to simulate what it looks like. And so my picture is the first picture. Every person that walks to that second
Love
floor,
it.
it's me holding a business plan. And I'm 12 years old and still up there today. So I had ministry and marketplace running simultaneously at the same time.
That's great.
So I was able to intermingle the lessons and
Yeah.
see just how transportable the principles were. And so go from music. We're inducted into the Colorado Gospel Music Hall of Fame. Didn't even know there was one until I was inducted into it and said, wow, I didn't realize I was being watched. And that was another principle. I was just so focused on being good, I didn't realize that I was being watched
Yeah.
and I was being evaluated, and people were looking at what I was doing and being inspired by it, being encouraged and built by it. And you fast forward by 21, on the marketplace side, I built Denver's largest African American owned real estate finance brokerage. One of the publications there in the area say, you're the biggest. And again, I was just focused.
Just
I
doing a
was just
good
focused.
job.
I'm doing a good job. And you're the biggest. And I said, well, I didn't realize that. Simultaneously, you've got ministry that's happening, and that business we had opened, did exceptionally well. Opened, an additional office, and I was really focused on taking people who had never been given the opportunity
Yeah.
to create income at levels that most people just don't often tap into. And we would take people, we would train, we would develop, and produce a great company. And then over the weekend, I watched that industry collapse.
Mm.
And it wasn't just our company, the entire industry. It
Yeah.
it began to just domino, and so I said, okay, it's time to pivot again. And here it is again, right? It's like that night they came into the church and said, by Wednesday you better have it. Now it's time to pivot. You can't do business the way you've been doing it.
Yeah.
And there was I was an associate pastor at that time. Now there's a shift happening on the ministry side. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You can run from it or you can run to it. So I did what I trained myself to do. I ran to it, and we pivoted, and to your point, got into planning a church, which was not my plan at all.
God always has a different plan.
Totally different plan.
My
um,
wife likes to say that you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Tell him your plans. Yep, exactly. Oh, and I'm sure he laughed at mine because I had a whole nother agenda. Interestingly enough, this is where DFW got on my radar. There was a church that was bringing in a new associate pastor there in the area, very well known church, very well known pastor in that area. And during that time, I thought, okay, well, you know what? I'll just take this role and go down there. So I was actually what I thought was going to go down to DFW and take that role as an AP down there. And that was my plan. And to your point, God laughed at that. So we, began laying the groundwork to plant a church from scratch with nothing. We had no benefactors. We had no backing. Remember, the business has now collapsed. So from its apex, I said, God, why didn't you have me to do this when I was at the zenith? Like, why are we having this conversation
Yeah.
as I'm cleaning up all of this mess? And I think there is another leadership lesson. Leaders are often made best in valleys,
Yeah.
and turning those valleys into places of victory are really, where I think leaders really thrive. Leaders are made best in the battlefield. And so that's what happened. So we planted Harvest from scratch with nothing on Saturday nights. The very first service had an amazing attendance, but that's because I stacked the room. I had every singing group, every dancing group, everybody you could possibly think. But next week, I had 7 people who were in that service. So here it is again. What are you doing? What are you supposed to do? Is this maybe you missed it? Maybe you're not supposed to be doing this at all. What
But
are
you
you
got
doing?
7, so that's better than some.
That's true. That's true. That's true. But again, coming from my background, I was used to large audiences.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
to see 7, I mean, what is this? What are you going to do? And now you fast forward, we've seen now well over 12,000 people who have made commitments of faith and professions of their faith. And, we moved forward into this whole hybrid world of leveraging technology and what have you. And so at the time of this recording, we're already to 1,400 people who have made those professions of faith just this year
No,
alone.
it's amazing.
We've seen, our database is well over 15,000 people that are connected and go and harvest their home. And so, that journey has been an amazing journey, and it's not over. That's the part I get most
Yeah.
excited about.
Yeah.
It's not over.
Just beginning.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You talk about the fire and whatnot. I was reading about in 2017 there was a sequoia fire in what's called the
Mm.
Nelder Grove, and usually they think that the slow burn is the right way for sequoias to grow and whatnot, and the geologists went in here because it was a really high heat fire. It actually
Right.
killed a number of sequoias, and what
Wow.
they found was in the low heat you don't have the reproduction.
Huh.
That low fire, you kind of deal with it, but it's the high heat that actually killed the sequoias. Had 100 times growth of new sequoia.
Oh,
So that that high heat, I think God uses that high heat
yes.
because on the low stuff, we just learn how to adapt to it, and we're
Yep.
resilient. We're gonna
Yep.
we're gonna muscle through. We're
Yep.
gonna pull ourselves up.
Yep.
You knock me down, I'm gonna get back up. But that high heat where you got nothing,
Right.
that's what he can work with.
Right. Oh my goodness. Let me tell you, I just want you to know I'm going to take that and use that. Now, the
Awesome.
first time I'm going to give you credit. The second time I'm going to own it and make it my own. But
There
no,
you
but
go.
I'm being facetious and just joking with you. But
No,
I
absolutely.
think that is so powerful because I
Yeah.
think you look at, I look back over the greatest defining moments of my leadership journey and just life journey, because I think the best leaders are just leaders in life. That's just who they are. It's an intrinsic part. It's not a hat they put on. It's just the way they live their lives. So you'll naturally find yourself in those seats where you're looking at things through the lenses of a leader, and that intense temperature, it changes you, but it
Yeah.
gives you the opportunity to grow and to produce. It reminds me of the biblical story of, the three boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They go into the fire. It's seven times harder than normal, but
Yep.
in the fire, that's when they discover something very powerful. And then
Yeah.
after that, they promote it.
Yep.
They get growth.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. Hey, everyone. I wanted to share something that is really near and dear to me: preparing leaders for the rise of the third workforce. As we move into this world where human teams are working alongside AI and digital talents, I'm really passionate about helping managers navigate this transformation. So, besides finding great talent at Evolve, I also love teaching them how to thrive in this new blended workforce. So, we offer workshops and training sessions to help your managers get comfortable leading teams that include both human and AI coworkers, because preparing your leaders today to succeed in the future is critical. So, if this sounds like something your organization could benefit from, well, I want to help out. So, check us out at evolvehrs.com. That's evolvehrs.com. And let's get your leaders ready to lead in the era of the third workforce. Now, back to the show. So I actually want to go back to something that we just flew over that I
Sure.
think is an important leadership principle. You had someone at your church when on that Monday they saw something in you to challenge you to actually step into a new role, into a new, let's call it destiny, because
Right.
it set you off into a new path.
Right.
Um, I think a lot of us have that person that sees something special and then pushes and challenges us, and I think that's a lost art of a lot of younger leaders today. They're like, oh no, I can't give someone an opportunity before they're ready. It's like, no, let's do that. So tell me a little bit about that leader, and what do
Yeah.
you think that prompted him to push you into a new direction?
Right. Well, if I look over the entirety of my life, it's always been that someone that saw something or said something that sparked something. Words have great power. Words frame our world. And so, if I was to go back to let's go back to Memphis, there was this teacher, two teachers. One, the principal, her name was Mrs. Wilburn, Mrs. Wilma Wilburn, and the teacher, Mrs. Denton. These two teachers in second grade at Dunbar Elementary School in Orange Mound, Memphis, Tennessee, they saw something different. So what did they do? They would put me in front of cameras, which is why when it came to media and television and all the things we do, that is just a natural thing for me. It is not something that it's difficult or taxing. They would put me in front of cameras. There was something that we're just coming out with. It was the newest, it was the hottest technology at the time. It was called the homework hotline. And parents could call in and get their kids' homework and whatever. Well, that
Love
was
it.
hot technology at that time. And so they put me in front of the Memphis newspaper, and they put me in front of when Smuckers had came in and adopted the entire school district and was injecting resources. They made me the spokesman for Smuckers, and so they put me on in stages, and they gave me these challenging opportunities to do these types of things. They saw something, they put me up to do it, and because I said yes. I got over my fears. I got over my nervousness, because believe it or not, I used to be extremely shy. I used to perspire a lot, and so you could tell I was shy because there was a physical trait showing that
Yeah.
that this has got me nervous. Then you fast forward to what you mentioned in music and leadership there. And it was at the end of it, I was like 9 o'clock on a Monday night. I was in the gym of the church at the time with one of my colleagues, and they came in and said, well, this is what we need you to do. And again, my first response is, me? Like, we've got, it's not like we don't have resources. This is this is a huge church. We can reach for anybody. You're reaching for me. And I think recognizing when people have skills and abilities, it enhances your leadership. It doesn't diminish your leadership.
Right.
It shows that you have the ability to spot diamonds in the rough. And it's a special skill set to be able to spot it, speak to it, and watch it sprout and watch it
Yeah.
grow. And that leader did that. And if I look at even after that, there was another leader who was the pastor's son. He used to do these huge plays and productions, hundreds of thousands of people over time made professions of faith and gave their lives to Jesus through that. And in them doing that, he was another one that would push me. He would say, this is too small for you. He would say, go do this. And what was crazy is I loved what I had learned to control and what I had learned to do really well. And to your point, that the low fire, I learned how to live in the low fire. And he would just push me. I remember one day, it was a Wednesday night, when I get switched over to I take over this entire choir. Choir is probably 200 people choir, so it's a huge choir. And so another it was a Wednesday night type situation. They came in and said, "We need you to go and run this." Guys, it's 6:15. I'm running the team that I got over here in the youth department. What are you doing? It was a large youth department, maybe 1,000 young people. And what are you talking about? Go over there. I don't know what we're doing. And so it's a choir that wear robes. They said, go ahead, put on a robe and just go ahead and leave. So I go in there. These people have seen me because I've been a fixture since I was a kid stuff.
Right.
So I think I was 17 or 18, something like that. And so they said, go. I go in there, lead this on a Wednesday night. I go in there. I do what it is that I've always done. Again, you can't see how nervous I am because I got a robe on. So the robe's
That's
covering
great.
up my perspiration. I do what I do. And the pastor who I've been on his staff since I was 12 years old, simultaneously building business, that he says, I didn't know you had the goods. He said, I didn't know you could do it like that. And again, another push into purpose is what I like to call it. I was pushed into purpose,
Pushed into purpose.
which learned how to do production, write songs, all of those types of things. I learned all of that, and here I was, a teenager, leading individuals, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s,
Yeah.
70s, 80s, and I learned how to lead people who had age but didn't have necessarily the position or the authority, and so I learned how to navigate through those places, because I think that's another challenge a lot of leaders can have is, how do I deal with someone who's three, four times, whatever times my age? How do I lead them? I learned how to do that very young because I was always in seats of authority over people who were, had more experience, had more knowledge, but what they didn't have was the seat of authority.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you're also a success coach, but
Right.
now what about that person who might be in their 50s or 60s, but they're not quite ready to finish things up, and all of a sudden some young punk is coming in trying to tell them what to do, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so you learned how to lead with authority when you were younger, and clearly from a young age you respected the elders, and I mean you can
Yeah.
hear that, um you know uh but right now that respect for for just that generation ahead of them. I mean, when I grew up, it was yes sir, yes ma'am, and now
Yes.
that's you don't hear that, even in the South. It's
Right.
diminishing. What would you say to that leader who still has 10 good years of work left into them, and they're now being managed by someone who doesn't have that same level of respect
Oh
for
my
them?
goodness. Amazing question. I think whenever there's an opportunity for refinement, God gives us the gift of sandpaper.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes dealing with leaders who, exactly to the scenario you gave, is the first thing is to not feel disrespected, but to feel like you're being developed in a way you weren't anticipating it. It's
Interesting.
sandpaper. It's refining me. I think that's one of the first things is to look at any scenario and say, how can I be better and grow out of this? It's a growth mentality, because if you
Hmm.
see it as, I put in years at this company, I've been doing this for years, I've got years in this thing, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. If you see it that way, that's a scarcity mentality. That's a lack mentality. You're
Yeah.
you're presuming that where you are is as far as you can ever go, and that's not true. Because one of my favorite things to say is, if you still got a pulse, there's still a plan. that plan is not over.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, one, look at it as refinement. And then two, look at it as ways to learn new skills. Because at the end of the day, we live in a workplace and environments and an economy where you've got, I mean, think about it. You've got AI, you've got young people, you've got people. I like people to say, just say you're not as young as you used to be, but you're still young. Always speak life to yourself. You're all over.
Mature.
Right. There you go. There you go. Like a fine wine, you get better over time.
Exactly. Exactly.
You integrate all those things together, and you really recognize that it's an opportunity for refinement, but it is also an opportunity to learn new skills, and it's also an opportunity to pivot whenever there's pain. Pain is an awakening to say, where does that need to be a pivot, and is it internally? Is it externally? Do I have the ability to have very honest and candid conversations? I think one of the mistakes sometimes people in that seat that maybe on the more mature side can make is attempting to subjugate a younger, supervisor, manager, what have you, director, subjugate them as, I got kids your age. Well, what you're doing is that's going to put them in a defensive posture. They're going to feel like they have to fight you. And I think one of the best things any person could do whenever there is any dynamic that's uncomfortable is to recognize how to navigate that dynamic. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to feel valued, appreciated, respected, like their contributions matter. And I think one of the worst things you could do is go in with a negative mentality. I remember that because when I was the young kid coming in, and if it was in one of my acquisitions or if it was in a ministry setting or what have you, and individuals would come with that approach, it wasn't very effective
Yeah.
because it immediately made me defensive. But when they came and said, how can we work together? Let's build something great together. Let's do this. It changed the entire dynamic of how I moved and how I operated, because I didn't feel like I had to be defensive. So
Yeah.
seeing that from both sides, because I used to be the youngest guy in the room. I'm not a mature wine, but I'm now. I'll hear guys in the room now, and I'm always, I think, oh, okay, all right, great, all right, okay, this everybody does eventually get older. Okay, it
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
happen to
Time slips
everybody.
by.
Right, right. I didn't think it was going to happen to me, but I guess everybody does eventually get older. It becomes one of those things of where you learn how to navigate it, and sometimes that can be the very best thing when you become an asset to a leader. That is going to give you great deference and
Yeah.
not see it as a competitive fight, which again, in a lot of corporate environments, that's the culture. I get it. But what's going to make a person different and stand out is how they handle that differently.
Yeah. No, that's great. I remember one time in my career, uh, I had the opportunity to actually hire one of my favorite bosses, and
Mm.
it was the
Mm.
weirdest, flip of the script, if you will,
Right.
because I mean, here's someone that, while he was hard to work for, he gave me more opportunities and pushed me, kind of like
Yep.
the
Yep.
gentleman telling you you got till Wednesday to
Yep.
learn the keys.
Yep.
Um, and here I had an opportunity to um, uh, give him a job so that he could then have the time to do what, land something a little bit long term. And
Yeah.
that was humbling. And I certainly learned, okay, I'm going to leverage because he brings a whole lot of knowledge and
Right.
wisdom and a lot of
Yep.
great things. I'm not gonna try and lord over him.
Right.
I'm gonna use it in a very differential way
Yep.
and just leverage the skills.
Yeah.
See the
I love how you
skills.
said that. Don't lord over him, but leverage him. I think that's so because I've had that same thing happen tons of times where individuals, and it's so interesting. And sometimes even if there was challenges in the relationship, I remember the very first company I went in as their marketing director. It's a pastor that owned the mortgage company and the real estate finance. And so that's where I learned that business. I went in to originally do their marketing because I've been marketing director for a while for a very large, nationally owned, they were new owners that come in, model and talent and acting agency. Their sister companies were the same companies that discovered Tyra Banks, Naomi Campbell, some of these very well-known
Yeah.
models. And so I came in again. I was in high school. I came in. I was a telemarketer. As telemarketer, then I was promoted to director of marketing. I was in high school, and so I was making models and making careers and leading a marketing department in high school. And then this particular individual brought me into his company to do that. It didn't go extremely well, and but I learned some skills, and I was always remain respectful. People tried to pull me into the, he did this. I said, no, 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 no. I'm going to remain respectful and remain thankful for the opportunity that I was given. That opportunity was very lucrative for me later on. And I remember one day running into him, and it was the most humbling experience. I remember running into him. He said, "Oh my gosh, you're doing so great. I hear all of the great things you're doing. Let's go to lunch." We go to lunch, and something amazing happens. He says, "You got to pay." He said he didn't have the money to pay. And I thought, I used to drive you around in your Lexus ES 300 when I was in high school, thinking if I could just be you one day, if I could just have a fraction of what you have one day. And then I remember it once we finished lunch. It's my pleasure to pay. Once we finished lunch, we were getting ready to leave, and he said, he said, "You think you might have some gas money for me?" I took him to the gas station, filled it up. I didn't realize his life had taken some really challenging changes. His wife was dealing with terminal illness. She since passed away from that.
Mm.
He was dealing with a lot of illnesses. A lot of things happened to him that just created a crazy scenario. And I remember calling my mother from that gas station, and I said, "You remember so and so?" She says, "I do." And she says, "Oh, that was just such a crazy situation." I said, "But I learned the value of respect and honor. And even in situations where perhaps you weren't handled right, that doesn't mean that you have to become what was done to you,
Yeah.
because that bitterness is poison, and you'll take it everywhere you go."
Mm.
And I've got tons of scenarios and situations like that,
Mm.
where maybe I wasn't handled right, but I chose to learn from it. Again,
Mm.
get hit in the face. What are you gonna do? Run to it, run from it. I chose to learn from it and to grow. And when that thing flipped, you had those types of scenarios. I've done the same thing. I've hired my family members,
Oh,
you
don't
know,
even get me started on hiring family members.
oh, I know. That's a whole nother podcast by
It
itself.
really is.
Yes, indeed.
Well, Bishop Foreman, unfortunately, we're right out of time. I knew this was going to happen. I knew we would just have a great conversation, but I love to give an opportunity for you to give us a little bit more information about your church websites. I know you're in pre-launch phase of
Yes.
a new location in Atlanta. So give us a little bit of that
Sure.
before we wrap up.
Sure. Everything's at bishopforeman.com, foreman.com. And they can find all of our books. All of my books, I just think like a leader. I can't help to do it. I think like an executive. I think like a chief executive. That's just the way my mind is built. So my books are to the point. So, I'm thinking of, and particularly men, I'll say for men, we like to generally get to the point, what the principle is. And, take us on a journey, but not too long of a journey. And let's get to the point. So all of my books are written with men in mind. There's one called Evolutionaries, Unlocking the New You. Another, Sins of the Fathers. How do you break these generational curses or empowerments to fail where others fail? And my life is that. I'm the first bishop, first PhD, first executive, first to achieve certain financial levels, first in many ways. And so I saw that principle active in my life. My latest project, History Makers, is a book we're working on now that'll release here in fall of this year. But all of that information about the church, about me, about our books, the podcasts we do, all the resources we have. I coach. That's one of the most exciting things for me. A lot of executives and leaders from fledgling to Fortune 500. Here's where you are. How do we get you to where you want to go? And the success is amazing. We started actually monitoring how many new individuals tap into new levels of revenue and income. And one of his amazing story, he came to me at one level, and he just followed the principles, followed the coaching, and within 3 years, this individual who was at one level in terms of his business, he 20x'd it within a
Wow.
couple of years. And so I share that to say, of course, life is so much more than just revenue and all of that. But I like to see people grow. I like to see people become everything that's in them. And it takes another person to sometimes see what's in you. So anyway, all of that is at bishopforeman.com. On social media,
BishopForeman.com.
all of it's at Bishop Foreman. Instagram, Facebook, all of it's there. I'm always going to have content that's going to encourage, going to inspire, going to lift you up, and be very practical. I think spirituality without practicality leads to neutrality. You're not going to do anything
Yeah.
if it's not practical. So I like for
Yeah.
things to be really practical. How can I take this and do something with this to change the lives of the people around me? Because ultimately, when we exit this earth, the only thing we get to take, we can't take our 401ks, our IRAs, our savings accounts. The only thing we really get to take are the lives that have been impacted as a result of what we've done. And leaders are lids for most people. So if the better the leader, the better the people, the better the organization, the better the family. And so I have a heart to really speak to leaders.
That's amazing. Well, Bishop Foreman, Dr. Kevin Foreman at bishopforeman.com. Boy, I encourage you to connect with him because his wisdom is definitely a resource worth tapping into. And I hope you come back to because I think we could spend hours talking about your journey and just your wisdom that the world really needs to hear more of.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. And listen, I love what you do. Let me just say this to you. Thank you for what you do, because it's these conversations that really create transformation. Some of my greatest therapy is a podcast. It is a conversation. It is something like this where I can listen and extract principles. And then sometimes you need to see yourself. You need to see parts of your journey and somebody else's journey to know this is regular, this is normal. So thank you for what you do, because it's an amazing service, it's an amazing resource, and it's adding value. So thank you for having me, and thank you. And you listen, anytime, I'd be more than happy to come back.
Well, fantastic. All right. Well, as always, thank you for joining us here on the Leadership Puzzle podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share with a friend, like it, leave a review. It helps us to continue to bring these conversations with amazing leaders. So until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep putting your pieces together. See you soon on the Leadership Puzzle.